14-story building of rubble that smoked until December of 2001.
Nobody talking what we against to build mosque. No. Everybody can build anything what they want. You want to pray, God bless you. You want a mosque, God bless you. But not put mosque on a cemetery. Because this place...
Questions, there's the microphone over there. You can just go over there and ask any one of us panelists. Would you like to speak, Ali? Right.
It's really so hard. It's funny and interesting how humans can go to extreme or to the extreme to get something done. Both ends. Radical Muslims, as well as the authors of this movie. We hate in order to get a point across, to create consensus. So there is nothing that I would say that would change or make any difference in the minds and the hearts of those who have deep-seated hatred toward Islam. Nothing.
I want to thank you all for coming. I just want to clarify a couple of things. We do not hate Islam. It is patently untrue. I love people. It's why I do what I do, and I subject myself to this. I am a counter-jihadist. I do not believe that 1.5 billion Muslims are bad people. I love Muslims. They themselves have been the victims of jihad. They themselves know the people that come to me in America, girls that because they're living in a devout household and their lives are in jeopardy and they have nowhere to go. I do not hate Muslims. This is a false narrative. It's unfair. Clearly, there is a problem with jihad across the world, and it needs to be addressed. And by demonizing me or killing the messenger or my colleague, Mr. Spencer, I can assure you that nothing will be solved. But anti-Muslim? No. I love people. My organization, American Freedom Defense Initiative, is a human rights organization dedicated to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and individual rights. Stop Islamization of America merely is devoted to the separation of mosque and state, which I believe as much as separation of church and state.
Because it will teach
well, let's call it an Islamic
people,
center then.
It will teach people a little bit about what they don't know
I'm all
about
for calling
Islam,
it an Islamic
and what
center.
media,
Let's call it an
like
Islamic
this
center.
movie, for
and
instance,
then let's think
is
about
trying
this
to
fact
show about
that
what Islam
there is, excuse me, sir, there is an Islamic center. There is a document, a captured internal document from that was released during the Holy Land Foundation Hamas Jihad Terror Funding Trial in 2007. It was an internal document of the Muslim Brotherhood, which of course is an international Islamic organization that is in the United States operating under various names, the Muslim American Society, the Islamic Society of North America, and the Muslim Students Association most notably. And in it, it talks about the Islamic Center. And it says that the Islamic Center is a base of operations that should work the way Muhammad's base worked in Medina, including a mosque, but being a center for, and it says for family, for study, and then for battalion. And I think it's very strange that there would be this martial word in there. And they speak about eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house so that Allah's religion is victorious over other religions. And they're doing it from this Islamic center. Now, I didn't make up this document. I didn't write this document. This document is a document of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so what am I supposed to do with that document? Am I supposed to think, oh, well, it would be Islamophobic to pay any attention to that document and to wonder if there are any groups in the United States that are working toward implementing that agenda, so we better just ignore it? Or should I think, well, maybe it would be prudent to stand for human rights that are threatened by the people who are trying to do this?
And those groups were named in the largest terrorist funding trial in this nation's history: CARE, ICNA, ISNA, MSA, and MAS. They were named. We're not just saying this to be controversial. It was entered into evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
When I believe Mr. Spencer talked in the movie about Sharia law and the jizya thing, just for your information, I don't know what your sources are.
Chapter 9, verse 29 of the Quran.
Okay, good for you.
Fight against those who do not believe in Allah and His Messenger,
Good for you.
obey or forbid what He has forbidden, even if they are of the people of the book, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. That's Al-Tawbah 29.
Okay.
You want to ask your question,
just for your
please?
information and for clarification for the rest of the people sitting here who haven't read the Quran in case, or for those of us who did, the Quran doesn't ask anyone to pay jizya. That's one thing. The second thing, Islam, when it came to Medina, it abolished al-jizya, and the Jews who were living in al-Medina were offered protection by the Muslims on the condition that they will not fight against the Muslims. That's one thing. The second thing is the weapons and everything that was used in the war to protect al-Medina by the Muslims living in al-Medina, which Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was one of them, was paid by Muhammad and his followers. Not a single penny was paid by anyone else. So, based on that, which is a fact, and you can go to all the books, not only you, anyone else can do that, based on the fact, when you spread, I'm not going to say lies, I'm going to use the word incorrect information, aren't you spreading hate speech?
Well, let me ask you the same question, because you're spreading incorrect information, and I'm going to give you the facts now.
Okay.
Actually, there were 3 Jewish tribes in Medina, as you know.
Yes.
The Banu Kainuka, Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir. 2 of them were exiled, and the 3rd was massacred on the orders of Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. He did collect the jizya. There is a hadith of Bukhari, from Sahih Bukhari, where he says, be sure to collect the jizya because it is the source of livelihood for you and your descendants. And there's a hadith from the Imam Muslim in Sahih Muslim, where he says, when you meet the unbelievers, invite them to 3 courses of action. First, invite them to accept Islam. If they refuse, invite them to pay the jizya. And if they refuse both, then seek Allah's help and fight them. And he carried that out, most specifically in the massacre of the Jews at Khaybar, who were the remaining Jews who had left Medina and been exiled by him to Khaybar to start with.
Can you
And
tell
so-
me?
The reality is that what we're seeing here in microcosm is exactly what we showed in the film. That we showed a story that is entirely accurate about people with a deceptive agenda who are enemies of various basic constitutional freedoms that are bulwarks and strongholds against tyranny in the United States and elsewhere.
You know, you have to design your plays. And you have to design your plays knowing that the other side is not going to be passive. So if we have strategic action plays, designed plays in the area of foreign policy, in the area of healing that divide, in the area of, and then you unpack and get of Israel, then what do you do? What are the specific actions that you might do? Because things are always moving, things are always happening.
Interestingly enough, though, it doesn't mean that the head coach is necessarily the president, because the of whatever country, or prime minister, because they may still be trapped by various constraints in an old game.
No, we've created a different concept, a different model, Mark. I'm the head coach of this strategic initiative, and the President of the United States or the President of Malaysia or the President of England is like a player that you want to bring in for particular plays. They are the members of the team that you want to bring in because and we're looking at it exactly like American football. You want to gain yardage, so you just want to keep scoring first downs.
And that they are pushing for an ideology that denies the freedom of speech, the freedom of conscience, the equality of rights of women with men, and the equality of rights of non-Muslims with Muslims. And we are resisting them in the name of defending those freedoms. And the immediate reaction is a false and deceptive, dishonest, disingenuous response accusing us of hatred. It is not hatred to stand for freedom. It is not hatred to stand for human rights. We have no apologies to make and plan to issue none. The reality of what is going on here is the same thing in microcosm that plays out after every Islamic Jihad terror attack anywhere in the world, especially in the United States. That immediately the Islamic supremacist groups in the United States, such as the Hamas-linked Council on American Islamic Relations and others, they immediately turn the narrative around to try to portray the Muslim community as victims, and even have gone to the extent of fabricating hate crimes, and it's been demonstrated. You can find it in a Daniel Pipes and Sharon Chadha article, CARE's Hate Crimes Nonsense, extensive documentation of how the Council on American Islamic Relations has released and publicized false claims of Muslim victimization based on fabricated hate crimes that either never existed or were perpetrated by Muslims themselves. Now, the reality is that any kind of act of hate, any kind of victimization of innocent people is abhorrent. But when we're talking about defending freedom, when we're talking about defending human rights, when we're talking about an insult to people whose loved ones and friends were killed on 9/11, for somebody to stand up here after that and try to portray himself as a victim is nakedly propagandistic. And you ought to be able, in a university setting, to see through it. And if universities were still what they ought to be, and what this institution probably once was, then you would never stand for it yourselves.